One of the secrets about getting really, really good at something is having some practical practice with it. So I'd like to share with you this necklace that I'm wearing. I don't know if you can read that from here. I'll check it and post edit to make sure. But that is a Tuit. And as far as labs and hands-on practice, everybody needs to get around to it. So in this virtual lab, we want to give you the opportunity to practice some of the basic navigation skills in the Cisco iOS at the command line interface, and to make sure that we're comfortable with how to get into configuration mode and interface mode and basically work with the CLI. So this first lab is a warm-up exercise on how to navigate in the world of the Cisco iOS. And for this exercise, we're going to focus on this router right here. We're going to start small. Basic navigation of the Cisco iOS. We've got this, and I'm going to walk you through it as well. So if you have any questions or how it works, jump alongside me right now. Click on that link. If you're at a computer logged on to CPT Nuggets, click the link for the virtual lab and follow along with me. So here's our tasks. We want to be able to enter configuration mode with the command. Well, there's actually 3 different ways to get into configuration mode, global config. We can fully type the command. We can use the tab to complete the commands as we put them in, and we can also put in the partial of a command as long as it's unique. And the key here is I want you to practice those alongside of me to get that hands-on practice so you absolutely are comfortable getting into configuration mode. Also, there are multiple ways of getting out. We can use the exit command. We can use type in end. We can also do a Control-Z. So I'd like us to practice all those as well as we begin the navigation of the Cisco iOS. Additionally, as we continue to focus on just this one router, router 1, I'd like us to go from configuration mode into interface configuration mode for gig 00. That's this interface right here that's connecting up to the core switch. And in configuration mode for interface gig 00, I'd like us to add this statement. Now let's take a look at this interface gig 00 on this router. This is the interface that is connected up into the core 1 switch. So all we're doing with this command is we're adding a description. Literally, it's a description. So we type in description. This is the interface, this one right here, that connects to the core 1 switch. So we don't need to include the quotes. That's just to show what I literally want you to type in that interface. And the reason I want to do this really long description is because that gives us an opportunity to practice with Control A, which brings our cursor to the beginning of a very long string, and Control E, which takes our cursor to the very end. So we can practice back and forth with that. And also, I want us to practice with the up and down arrow keys. And the benefit of that is great because we're going to do a lot of commands that are very similar and maybe sometimes the same exact command. And by using the up and down arrow keys, that can save us a boatload of time. And the great thing is that you and I can enjoy with this hands-on practice in getting more comfortable and familiar and faster at the CLI as we begin to work with Cisco devices. Now on Cisco routers, they can run a routing protocol that talks to other routers. They can dynamically learn how to forward packets on the network. Well, if we want to go ahead and configure a specific routing protocol, we also need to know how to go into that logical configuration mode for that routing process. So we'll do that as well. And for that, we'll use an example of going into the RIP routing process. And the command from configuration mode, from global config, would be router space RIP, press enter, and that puts us into router configuration mode for that specific routing protocol. And for our grand finale, let's do this. Instead of typing in Control-Z or end or exit to get out, let's go ahead and just do a jump directly from the routing protocol for RIP, and we'll jump directly over into interface configuration mode for gig 1/0. Just give us some practice in knowing that if we need to or want to, we can jump from one logical subroom over to another one, like jumping from the routing process over to an interface, just by using the command interface gig 1/0, pressing enter, and it'll jump us directly to that interface configuration mode. So here's what I propose we do. I'm going to pause for a few moments, put some music on for like maybe 10 seconds, and if you're up to it, I'd like you to take these tasks, go to the lab, and actually get the hands-on practice. Just walk through it. Now, one of the secrets that I often use is I might have a mobile device, and I'll have the page open with all the tasks in one screen or multiple screens. And then I can go ahead and do the lab on my computer on a separate screen so I can look at the tasks consistently while I'm in the interface. So I'm going to put some music on right now for a few moments. Please pause me, launch the virtual lab, have a lot of fun. And our focus is doing all this navigation with the Cisco iOS on router 1. So here's the lab environment, and to facilitate learning and make it as effective and direct as possible, I've got tabs across the top that connect to the console port on each of the devices. And so we're going to focus on router 1. So we'll click the tab here for router 1. And we currently are in privilege mode here on router 1. Now, it hasn't been configured yet. That's why this router's name is still literally router. We'll fix that in an upcoming lab. But for now, on router 1, I'd like us to practice some basic navigation starting here from privilege mode. So our first task, starting here at the pound sign in privilege mode, was to enter configuration mode using the fully typed command. So to go into configuration mode, do you remember what the command is? And if you're saying, yeah, Keith, I can do this 3 or 4 different ways, I might ask, how is it that you can do that? And you might say, well, I watched it being done several times, and check this out, this is the best answer, I've done it. So if you've done the labs, you've practiced these commands, that's going to reinforce it. And check this out. I have fellow coworkers who haven't worked with Cisco devices maybe for 2 or 3 or 4 years. They're working in cloud services and other things. But when I ask them to come back to the CLI, they're amazing. And I'm like, how after 2 or 3 years are you still able to issue these commands? And the reality is because they had so much practice and experience doing it, like what we're doing right here in this lab, that it just becomes part of your memory and your muscle memory, and we're going to be better and better as we apply and do the hands-on practice. So here, the first task was do a fully typed command, so configure space terminal, press enter, fantastic. And now let's practice one way of getting out of global config, and one way would just be to type in exit. That takes us back 1 level. Now we have this log message that came up and it's kind of in our way. Our cursor got pushed to the end. We can solve that 2 different ways. We can either press the tab key or the enter key. Either way will refresh the screen and bring us up to a new line. All right, next let's go into configuration mode again using tabbed completion. So CONFI, and I'm going to hit tab right there. Configure space TERM, hit tab, and boom, there we go. So that's tabbed completion in getting into configuration mode. To get out, we already typed in exit. Let's try using this option right here, Control Z. So we'll hold down the Control key, hit the Z key, and boom, we're back to privilege mode, out of configuration mode. And I'll press tab just to refresh that line at the bottom. The last option is to do a partial command. So let's type in C. And if we're ever concerned, is that unique? Is C all by itself unique? You can do a question mark, and it'll show you what the possible commands that start with C. Now in this lab environment, which is a little bit set up just for labs, we have 2 options. Clear and configure. So if I just type C here and press enter, it says, I'm not sure what you mean. Could have gone either way. You know, it's a 50-50 shot. You could have been meaning configure as your first word or clear. So we need a little more clue to actually make it work. So we'll type in CON and a question mark. That's unique. So we can just do a space and then we can type in the next command. And we'll type in T and do a question mark. And that's unique. So pretty much for this router right here, that's all I need. It knows exactly what I meant to say. Configure space terminal. And then to get out, let's use our third option here, which is end. And that takes us all the way out of configuration mode, regardless of where we were. If we were 2 or 3 levels deep, typing in end takes us all the way back out. So let's press enter. And one other thing too is normally we'll do a CONF space T, because on some routers there's going to be other options that start with CON. And if we want it to be unique, we use the full CONF. You can always use that question mark to verify if it's unique or not. All right. I'm going to do a Control Z. So let's do inventory. What have we done? We've gone into configuration mode, global configuration mode, 3 different times in 3 different ways. We also got out by using the commands exit, Control Z, and also the command end. So whichever one works for you that you want to use, fantastic. You've got those tools in your tool belt. We're rehearsing them and getting better and better with them. Our next step is to go into configuration mode for this specific interface, which is gig 00. Enter configuration mode for interface gig 00. So we're going to go into global config first, and then from global config, we're going to type in interface gig 00, and that will drop us in that little room just for configuration information regarding that specific interface. So back at privilege mode, we'll type in config T, and then from global config, we'll type in interface. I'm going to tab this out just so you see the full command. Interface space gig. I'll tab that out too just for good measure. And then the interface we're going to is gig 0/0 and enter, and bada bing, bada boom. This part right here, IF, is a clue. That really is all it is. It's a clue that says you're in interface configuration mode for some interface. So currently, because the command is right here above it, we can know that we are in interface configuration mode for gig 00. Fantastic. Now, the next piece of this is I would like us to add a very long description. So here in interface configuration mode, we'll type in description. I'm going to tab that out. We'll do a question mark to see what's next. And basically it says, okay, you got up to 200 characters. Have a good day. So we'll type in this is the interface that connects to the Core 1 switch. And I want you to know something cool that just happened. The terminal window wasn't wide enough for the whole string of text, so it put a little $sign here at the far left, indicating, hey, there's something behind there, meaning there's more text to the left. So let's press enter to take the command, and this is a perfect opportunity for you and I to practice our up and down arrows. If we hit the up arrow, it'll bring up that command again, and then if we want to, we can use the commands Control A to go all the way to the beginning, and Control E to go all the way to the end, to navigate back and forth with our cursor where it is in that line. Let's take a look. So we'll hit the up arrow key, and then if I want to go to the beginning on the far left, I can use the arrow, just go left, 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 or I can use the Control A, and that brings us all the way to the far left. And check this out. Look at this. It now has a little $sign on the far right, indicating, hey, there's more stuff over there. Just be aware there's more stuff to the right. So if we wanted to see that stuff to the right, we could do a Control E to go to the end. Now there's other shortcut keys to jump one word at a time and so forth, but the two major ones that I want to make sure I reinforced in this lab was Control A all the way to the beginning and Control E all the way to the end. And if we don't want to issue this command because it's already issued, we can do a Control Z, and that'll take us out of configuration mode all the way back to our privilege mode prompt. So for our next navigation practice, let's go into a configuration mode for a specific routing process, and we are going to go into the process for the routing protocol named RIP, Routing Information Protocol. That's literally what the acronym stands for. So back in the lab, to get to a interface config or to get to a router configuration for a routing protocol process, we need to go back into configuration mode. So we'll do a config T, and then to go into the routing process for RIP, the command is router space, and we'll do a question mark for context sensitive help. Here's many options, but the one I want to demo here is RIP. So we'll type in RIP and press enter. And bada bing, bada boom. See how the prompt changed? Now it says config-router, meaning we are in a routing protocol process, and to know which one we're in, we'd have to look at the command above it that brought us here. So this is the configuration mode for the routing protocol named RIP. Now, I also used RIP because it's probably the last time we'll have to issue it. So RIP is an older distance vector routing protocol. In future skills, as part of CCNA, we'll take a very close look at distance vector and link state routing protocols and why they matter, and then we'll focus our attention, you and I, on how OSPF works and how to configure it and verify it. We have a lot of fun coming up, so stay tuned for that. All right, so back to the CLI. So now we're sitting here in the router configuration mode for RIP. We've put any commands here that were applicable for this routing process. And the last thing I'd like us to do is this. Without typing end or exit, I'd like us to go ahead and jump directly from this routing protocol process that we're in and jump directly over to interface gig 1/0, its configuration mode. So that would be, this interface is this one right here, still on the router 1 router. So to do that, if we're anywhere in configuration mode, all we need to do is just type in interface gig 1/0 and poof, it'll take us right there. So because we're already in a configuration mode, regardless of which one, if we typed in interface space and then gig, I forgot which interface. Let me take a look. Okay, interface 1/0. So we type in 1/0 and press enter, and poof, we are now, if we look at the prompt, we are now in interface configuration mode, and based on where we told it we wanted to go, we're in interface configuration mode for gig 1/0. Now, if you're up for it and you want even more of an opportunity to get that hands-on practice and reinforce the skills, I have an opportunity for you, and that's this. I'd like you to take the same list here that we just did, and instead of doing them on router 1, all those things would also apply to a multi-layer switch or to a switch. So if you go up to Core 1, you can do the same commands there and practice the navigation. And that's going to do two things for us. One, it's going to reinforce the commands on how to navigate the iOS, and it's also going to give you a little comfort level. Wow, you know what? I can navigate this and go back and forth between the configuration modes, whether it's a router or a switch. And that's a good skill to have and a good comfort level to have. So I encourage you to take that opportunity right now in the hands-on lab and practice. Now, if you're watching this on a tablet or a mobile device, you're not logged on, please schedule 15-20 minutes sometime in the near future. Don't wait too long, and actually do the practice next time you have time on a computer to get that hands-on practice. And now that we've had some practice, hands-on practice in reinforcing how to navigate the Cisco iOS, in the next video, we'll take a look at how to configure basic things like the host name, the banner messages. Also, that little log message that keeps popping up and getting in our way, we'll also correct that with the logging synchronous command on console 0. All that and more coming up in the next lab. See you there in just a moment. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.